hello to another episode of Movie Bollocks and another review special, because I haven't got anybody to have as a guest at the moment, but there will be guests coming soon, and more will be revealed as I go through everything I've been watching recently. I've had a little bit of isolation, a little bit of recovery from illness, been trapped indoors, so watched a clutch of movies and series, and wanted to go through them for you. So here we go. Now I'm going to start with something that I saw years ago that I was inspired to watch again. In fact, I was inspired to buy the Blu-ray so I could get the theatrical version and the director's cut, which I've never seen, of a fantastic movie. And I was inspired by the brilliant podcast by friend of the show, Paul Waller, the excellent A Year in Horror. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe now. And The Exorcist III was discussed in detail, and I was like, I love that movie. I absolutely love it. So I bought the Blu-ray, watched it again, and I mean, it's dated slightly, the effects have dated slightly, but the ability to shit you up has not dated at all. A really, really good movie. And I mean, I was banging to this back in the day. In fact, when I was in a band called Strange Thing, post Acid Rain, we used a line from the dialogue as a sample in one of the songs. Yeah, that's how much I like it. So there you go. Give it a whirl if you get a chance. So it's more of a direct follow-up to the first Exorcist movie than Exorcist 2, which we'll just brush off because that was a complete and total waste of time. But anyway, right, let's get stuck in, and I'm going to go in with a massive release. Those of you that will want to see this will have already seen it. And that is Dune, directed by my favourite director working at the moment, Denis Villeneuve, who also did Blade Runner 2049 and Arrival, and Dune is awesome. I mean, visually, at times there are little throwbacks to Blade Runner 2049, and from on the soundtrack as well. And I just really, really enjoyed it. Part 1 flashes up right at the beginning, and I can't wait for part 2 already. It really is. In fact, I couldn't wait for part 2 about halfway through part 1. It's an expert example of world building. It looks fantastic. It really does. And with all Denis Villeneuve movies, it's directed for me beautifully. And for the main criticism, some people will go, boring. Okay, I get that. But that is because we are constantly fed a diet of movies that are edited and directed in the times we live in. And Denis Villeneuve tends to be a bit of a throwback. So, for instance, if you go back and watch movies like Alien now, it seems really slow, but it's building an atmosphere, it's building a world, it's introducing you to characters, and it's not in any rush to do that. It doesn't feel any pressure to get everything out as soon as possible. Whereas over the years, directing, the pacing of movies has changed. And now, really, you're not allowed to take your time. You really do have to keep moving. I mean, these are, societal shifts, and these things happen. But Denis Villeneuve has ignored that, and he still directs in that I'm going to tell this story, and I'm going to tell it at my pace. I'm going to introduce you to these characters. I'm going to let it all just reveal itself somewhat organically, as opposed to smash along at a cracking pace. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of both. But there's not many directors around who have, studio backing, frankly, to do what they do the way they do it. And Denis Villeneuve is one of them. And I loved Dune, and I cannot wait for part 2. No point really going into too much detail about it. It is just has to be seen. And preferably seen on the big screen, which I haven't done yet, but I will be needless to say. So, next up from on Netflix, a movie called Kate. Now, I've got to be honest. This stars Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Woody Harrelson, and a female assassin has 24 hours to get vengeance on her poisoner before she dies. And I don't remember a massive amount about the movie. I've got to be honest. Now, I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, but I've got IMDb open. I'm looking at the images and stuff like that, and yeah, I enjoyed it, but it's not stuck with me in any way. But hey, look, I enjoyed it, and it passed a couple of hours, so there you go. Next up was Rushed. Now, Rushed there seems to be different titles for this. It's called Rushed, or it's called The Frat Haze. I would imagine it's called The Frat Haze in the States, and outside of the States it's not called that because it doesn't make sense anywhere else. But yeah, so over here it's called Rushed. Confusingly, on IMDb, it's called The Frat Haze at the top of the page, but then it shows the poster and it just has Rushed on it. And it's about an Irish Catholic mother who has her life turned upside down when her son, a freshman in college, is involved in a tragic hazing incident. It's pretty darn gripping. It says it's kind of loosely based on real events, and it's incredibly hard hitting. There is stuff in it where you go like, oh my god, really? It's, and it's left hanging as to what's happened. And I found it really engaging. It's really, really well acted, and not a world obviously that I know anything about, but certainly something that I enjoyed watching. It's an hour and 41 minutes, and I enjoyed it. It didn't blow me away, but I enjoyed it. Next up is The Green Knight. That's on Amazon, and it stars Dev Patel, and it's well, I've heard people saying that it's a retelling, or it's a take on the tale of King Arthur. Obviously, King Arthur was a knight. Well, he was a king until he pulled the sword out the stone, etc. Now, The Green Knight it's a couple of hours long. I enjoyed it. I'm not sure I'd watch it again, but there are parts of it where I was absolutely just in awe of what was going on. I mean, it didn't make sense, and I didn't know why it was happening. And at the end of 2 hours, there are parts of it where I was like, okay, those sections, why were they even there? And I kind of get to wondering if this movie was actually supposed to be 2.5 hours or 3 hours. But even so, yeah, it's honestly, it's a strange one, because I watched the whole 2 hours, and like I said, there were times where I was amazed, and there was times where I was like, I'm not really sure what's going on. And at the end of it, it was one of those where you're still left figuring it out. And maybe I will go back to it and watch it again. I think, there's probably every chance I will. But I recommend it. I'd recommend it, but again, it is the kind of thing that I think some people would be, turning off after an hour going, what the fuck's going on? Whereas other people will be drawn in by it. Hey, look, your taste is your taste, isn't it? But, I enjoyed it, even if I'm still not quite sure, about it. And I wasn't aware of the whole King Arthur thing until afterwards, but there you go. Anyway, next up was a rewatch, something I rewatched recently, with a friend. They hadn't seen it, and I was like, wow, you're in for a treat here. Well, sort of, because it's not the kind of movie there you go, oh, that was a real treat, because it leaves me every time with a sense of emptiness, with a sense of, disbelief, anger, I was going to say upset, but that's not really an emotion, isn't it? It's one that really, really, I just find touching, I guess. And that is the movie Dead Man's Shoes. I mean, it's one of my top 10 movies of all time. I'm not going to say anything about it. Well, I am. But if you haven't seen it, I thoroughly recommend watching this. It's Paddy Considine co-wrote it with Shane Meadows. It's a Shane Meadows movie. If you know who he is, then you know what kind of movie it is. Paddy Considine co-wrote it. He stars in it. He is absolutely terrifying in it. And it's brilliantly cast. It's brilliantly acted, including in the cast, in his best role ever, ex-boxer Gary Stretch, who is awesome in it. I mean, for me, it's a 10 out of 10. I can't see any way I can't see anything wrong with this movie. I mean, I watched it, like I said, with somebody who hadn't watched it before, and I got something out of it that I never got out of it before, noticed something that I hadn't seen before. It's just, yeah, I mean, it's a proper work of genius. It really is. So, yeah, Dead Man's Shoes. I've recommended that to somebody else previously as well. I'm trying to think who it was. I think it was DX Ferris. And, so yeah, make sure you watch it when we did the movie Bollocks. And yeah, he messaged me and he was like, whoa, you could have warned me. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, I've mentioned it many, many times, but I've watched it again. I'm mentioning it again. And now another British movie that couldn't be any more opposite to this, including, well, it's got Paddy Considine in it, and that's the only connection between these movies. It's called Blitz, and it's a Jason Statham vehicle from about 10 years ago. Well, actually, not about 10 years, about 7 or 8 years ago. Paddy Considine is in it. He is playing opposite Jason Statham. Paddy Considine's quite young in it. He's on his way up in his career. Stath is a bit more, a bit more settled, a bit more, known. So he's the star in it. And yeah, it's a perfectly satisfactory, kind of, cop drama. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's 90 minutes. It's nothing amazing. Doesn't really write the book on anything, but it's worth a watch. It's worth a watch if you're in the mood for that kind of thing. Okay. Next up was Operation Finale. Now that is on Netflix and it's been in my list for ages. And I thought, do you know what? It's about time I watched this. About time I got round to watching this. Ben Kingsley's in it. Come on. Yeah, it's got to be worth watching, hasn't it? So I finally got into it. Now, for those who are unaware, of this, I mean, why would you be aware of this movie unless you've seen it? Also, opposite Ben Kingsley is Oscar Isaacs, and he's rapidly becoming a bit of a fave of mine. And he also appears in one of my another movie on here, which, do you know what? I've just noticed I've left out, which is bizarre. I must have not made a note of it. Anyway, Operation Finale. It's a true story about a team of secret agents set out to track down the Nazi officer who masterminded the Holocaust. So there you go. It's a 2-hour movie about the Holocaust, about hunting down a Nazi war criminal. I mean, truth is stranger than fiction. All the rest of it. It is. I really, really enjoyed it. What a movie. I mean, I can thoroughly recommend this, but this kind of thing is not for everyone. I get that. I absolutely get that, because it's quite harrowing. Let's face it, something is either harrowing or it isn't. And yeah, it is harrowing. So, I don't really want to talk too much about it because there's not a lot I can say other than it's about the Holocaust. So there you go. And it's very, very good. And also linked to another movie I've already mentioned, Oscar Isaacs. It's also in Dune. Isn't that interesting? Well, yeah, seriously. Anyway, and I'm actually on his IMDb page at the moment, and I'm looking at the movies he's done, and one of them is the next one, which I haven't got on my list, The Card Counter. Okay, 1 hour, 50 minutes, The Card Counter. It's a Paul Schrader movie, for those of you who know Paul Schrader movies. It's he's not in a rush. He takes his time. For me, I enjoyed it. I was engaged. Ultimately, I found it a little disappointing. Took a little bit too long to kind of really reveal itself and where it was going. But that's, 1 hour, 50 minutes is a long time to end up disappointed when you've invested all that time in it. But then again, you might not be disappointed with it. You might go, yay, that worked for me. So, go for your life. Now, next up, Finch. Finch is on Netflix. It's a Tom Hanks movie where he stars in it with a dog and a robot that he builds to look after the dog for when he's not around. It's post-apocalypse, so it's just Tom Hanks and a dog. Then he builds this robot to effectively be a dog minder for when he's not around. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, it is so Tom Hanks. It's Tom Hanks and a robot, and the robot is really well done. It's an AI. So what I really liked is the way its voice keeps changing all the way through the movie. When it starts out, it's very much like, "Will I do this now? Yes, I should do this now. Yeah, yes, whatever you say," and stuff like that. And it's just stuff like that. It's not stuff like that, but anyway. But by the end, it's picking up a more human voice, and the guy who's voicing it, more of his voice is coming through because it's an AI and it's learning and obviously becoming more intelligent, because that's what AI, artificial intelligence, stands for. I know you knew that, but I just thought I'd say it anyway. So yeah, look, there's tons of robot movies out there, and this is another one, but it's with Tom Hanks, and ultimately, it's really cool. I really enjoyed it. I bought into it absolutely, hook, line, and sinker. It's not the greatest movie Tom Hanks has ever made. For me, it's not that kind of thing where I'm going to go, "Oh my God, it was amazing." It's just not my kind of movie where I'm going to go completely overboard about it. But I enjoyed it, and I'd solidly recommend it. It's family viewing. It's family friendly. Well, let's face it, a lot of Tom Hanks stuff is family friendly. A bit like the man himself. Not that we've ever met. But it's just really, really enjoyable. And I really bought into it. It's a bit kind of like, a Tom Hanks kind, Tom Hanks with the robot sort of chappy walking around. Anyway, that's enough about that. Next up is The Dark Red. Now, I can't remember if this is on Netflix or Amazon, but it is on one of the others. So, The Dark Red, I enjoyed it. It's one of those movies where you're not quite sure about it. The main character is a woman who is in a mental institution. She is psychotic. She's schizophrenic. And she's trying to explain to her therapist how she isn't. And it kind of goes through there. And you're very much, the story is very much told from her point of view. You see the world through her eyes. And you have to decide whether, how mad she is. Is she mad at all? What's going on? It's one of them. And I enjoyed it. It didn't blow me away. A slightly lackluster ending for me, but even so, not an ending that made me go, "Well, that was a fucking waste of time." And I haven't said that now. So check it out for yourself. See what you think. And as with all of these, let me know what you think. If you give anything a whirl that I've mentioned here, then please do just. Give me a shout. Also, one thing I have to say is that, I've been accused of, not accused, but some people say, that movie you recommended or whatever. None of, this isn't a list of recommendations. It's a list of movies I've watched. That's all. Okay. So, admittedly, if I have recommended it and you fucking hate it, then fair dues. Our tastes differ. Let's face it. Everybody's tastes differ. I mean, the amount of times I'll look at something on IMDb, having watched it, and then go, bloody hell, that's a bit of a harsh mark, isn't it? And if I'd seen that mark, I might not have even bothered watching it. But no, everyone's opinions are different, so let's go for it. The Dark Red, yeah, it was okay. Now, next up is something that surprised me, and that is No Time to Die, the new James Bond. My all-time favourite James Bond movie is Casino Royale with Daniel Craig. Fucking loved it. I love the way that they brought it back from the brink of the almost comedy years with Pierce Brosnan and just made it relevant and rough and tough and full on. And I love that movie. And then unfortunately, Question of Sport, as I always call it, Quantum of Solace followed after that, which was just a mess. Then it was Skyfall. Now, I know a lot of people think Skyfall, which I fucking hated it. I thought it was terrible. The villain in it, Javier Bardem, is like channeling Frankie Howard. It's horrendously jarring in places. The tone is all over the place. And at the end, towards the end, it becomes for me a bit of a fucking the Only Fools and Horses episode with the chandeliers in the mansion. In other words, I didn't like it very much. I thought it was shit. I think it's one of the worst James Bonds. Never mind, one of the best. But there you go. Then there was Spectre, and it was Christoph Waltz being Christoph Waltz, like he is in every film. Ooh, cuckoo. Ooh, James, fuck off. Oh, look, he must be insanely evil. He's not wearing socks. It just really didn't do much for me. And then No Time to Die, for me, was a really lovely bookend with which to bring Daniel Craig's period as James Bond to an end. I think the first movie he made as James Bond was great. And I think No Time to Die is great. And unfortunately, I think the ones in between were, for me, fucking rubbish. But No Time to Die really brought it back. Rami Malek is a suitably evil villain. There's some great roles in it. There's some updating, but it's not hideous or notable or clunky. And I just really, really enjoyed it. I really did. Way more than I thought I was going to. There's as always, some great lines in there, some fantastic action. And yeah, I was really surprised. So maybe I'm raving about it, a little bit more than I would normally. Because as I always say, it's about, with anything, music, movies, anything, it's about what a lot of what you're going to get out of it is about, what you bring to it. So for instance, by that I mean, if you're really, really looking forward to something and it lets you down, it can be, oh, I fucking hate that movie. Whereas, if you'd measure your expectations, or not measure your expectations, but if you weren't looking forward to it that much and then something surprises you as really good, you can then be overly praiseworthy of it. So, No Time to Die, for me, I wasn't expecting much, but I really, really enjoyed it, really rated it. And I will probably watch it again as well. So, there you go. Next up after that was, again, I think it's on Amazon, Feedback. Now, I kind of watched this mainly because it's got a very strong cast. It's 90 minutes, and I was in the mood for something that was, it was basically 90 minutes and going to get stuck in. Eddie Marzan is the lead. There is there's a lot of Cockney accents right at the beginning, which does my head in a little bit. And Anthony Head, he of Buffy, Giles, he'll always be Giles to me. He's in it for a little bit as well at the beginning, at the end. It's I will describe it. It's called a hostage radio flick. Don't say too much more than that, other than a pretty objectionable chip on his shoulder twatty DJ ends up being under siege in his own studio. And it's how can I say, I wouldn't say I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say that I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't boring, and the whole time I was engaged all the way through it. And I wouldn't say it was disappointing, but I also wouldn't say that it was, fantastic or blew me away. I would say, look, if you were like me, if you've got spare 90 minutes and you fancy watching something that's just going to get in, get out, and is all based in one place, so it's very much about the characters and their actions within that small space, then go for it. There's some twists and turns along the way. Ultimately, it finished and I was just kind of like, right, okay, yeah. All right, so that's what happens. Right, okay, well, I've watched that now. I can take it out my list. One of them. But, yeah, anyway, next up, Last Night in Soho, which I watched not long ago, and I really, really enjoyed it. What can I say? It's brilliantly acted. I think, basically, I don't want to give too much away about... Well, it's kind of... At one point, you've got Thomasin McKenzie and Anna Taylor-Joy kind of playing the same character, but not... Which I realise sounds confusing and is unhelpful, so apologies, but I can't think of a better way of putting it. And it's just brilliantly done. Brilliantly done. Matt Smith is in it and is unlikable as he's probably ever been. It's an Edgar Wright movie, so for those of you who are aware of Edgar Wright, then you know his work, and it's everything from Baby Driver to Hot Fuzz to Shaun of the Dead. It's, except this is, he directs it, he co-wrote it, well, he came up with the story, and then Christy Wilson Cairns wrote the screenplay from his story. And I really enjoyed it, really captures the swinging 60s of Soho, but also modern day London as well, because they're both represented in equal parts. Thomasin McKenzie is great, Anna Taylor-Joy is great, I really, really, and I think there's also a fleeting appearance by Terence Stamp. Now, I'm just going to check that. Oh, of course, yeah, and it was Diana Rigg's last ever role before she died, and she's brilliant in it. And I just a lovely kind of sign off from her and her movie career. She was a wonderful, wonderful actor in her day, and still is in this movie. And it was the last movie she made. So there's reason enough to watch it. And yes, there is a cameo. Well, not a cameo, but a very small role for Terence Stamp in it as well. It is 2 hours long, and it's just shy of 2 hours long. 1 hour 56. I recommend this movie. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to give anything away about it. I really don't. It's part ghost story, part ghost story, part horror story, part mental illness. Definitely. Yeah, well, it is. Mental illness is definitely there as one of the themes of the subtext, and it's just brilliantly directed. It looks great. It's pacey. It's dramatic. It's scary. It's good. So, what more do you want? Next up is Infinite. Now, Infinite is on Amazon. It is it's made by Amazon, and it is a Mark Wahlberg movie. But to say it's a Mark Wahlberg movie would be a little bit harsh, because it's got a really good cast, and it's directed by Anton Fuqua, who some of you may know and some may not. There's a lot of writers on it, which always worries me a little bit. But it stars Mark Wahlberg, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Sophie Cookson. It's a really good cast. It's a Jason Mantzoukas, Rupert Friend, Toby Jones is in it. So yeah, it's like, oh, people are popping up all over the place here. And it's time travel meets reincarnation. And I mean, it starts with some brilliant action, absolutely brilliant action. And the one thing about this movie that kept me interested was the pacing. It starts and it doesn't stop until the end. It really does just pick you up and drag you along with it. Some incredible action in it, and but what can I say? It is a bit dumb, okay? I mean, I've seen some savage reviews of it, which I personally really didn't think, I really didn't think that it deserved the kicking that it seemed to get from some people. But that's because I found it, I was engaged in it, and I watched it. Mark Wahlberg is an engaging screen presence. His action is superb in it, and there's a lot of strands going on here that get pulled together. And if nothing else, the action and the pacing really kept me going, even if sometimes there were plainly, obviously things wrong with the plot. But even so, I kind of enjoyed it, and it was one of those where it caught me at the right moment. I had no expectations of it, and so I ended up going, do you know what? I kind of enjoyed that. Yeah. Now, also during it, as I'm apt to do, somebody's in a scene, and you think, oh, who is that? I know them from somewhere. Just get the phone out, have a look at IMDb. Oh, it's them, right? And this happened in this movie, and I was like, I know that actor. How do I know that actor? Where do I know him from? And I went down and I found him, and I thought, I recognise the name, so I clicked on the name, and I thought, I don't recognise. The reason I know this name is I know that guy. I've not recognised the actor. I've recognised the actor, but I've not recognised him from previous movies. You know him? Bloody hell! Is that really? And I'm going to leave the name out. Is that really him? So I was like, right, Wikipedia, straight over to Wikipedia, because I recognise the name. A comedian I used to gig with way back in the day, like, late 90s. And so I went on to, found his name, went into Wikipedia. He's got a Wikipedia page, and in the Wikipedia page it said, and for a period he was a stand-up comedian and ran comedy gigs on the London circuit as well. And I was like, bloody hell, it really is him. Went on to Twitter, sent him a message, and the message was just like, hey dude, long time ago, don't know if you remember me, but just saying hi. And before the movie had finished, I got a message back from him saying, of course I remember you, Howard. How's it going, mate? I was like, Jesus Christ, that's amazing. Because he's in a fairly early scene in the movie. And before the movie had finished, I'd realised it was him, found him, realised it was him, found his Wikipedia, found him on Twitter, sent him a message, and got a message back. I mean, yeah, insane. I'm just insane. So I'm hoping to have him on the podcast next year. But we need a chance to catch up together first. Yeah. So anyway, Infinite, really enjoyed it even more because my old mate's in it. So next up, Paper Tiger. Now, this is not for everyone, okay? It is about a Chinese-American family. In the very first scene, I'm not giving too much away here, father has clearly died, leaving mother and son behind. And the sort of catchline in the movie is she thinks, oh, shut up, computer. She thinks that he might be a school shooter. Now, the movie's mostly in English. There's a lot of important scenes in Chinese as well, which are all subtitled. So it's a real mixture of the two. It's not necessarily something that you would enjoy given the topic. I have to say that the study of a young boy in pain, struggling with the loss of his father, who he clearly idolized, is absolutely brilliant. It really is. It was just, it's at times harrowing. And I know I've said that word before, but it was just really, really, at times, difficult to watch is fair. It's just, well, I'm not doing a very good job of describing this, am I? Truth is, I'm trying to find the young actor's name to give him some credit here, so bear with me a second. Right, Alan Tong. It's playing somebody with who is falling apart mentally and being taken over clearly by mental illness is the temptation to overact that must be massive. To actually get it spot on and believable, and at times, frankly, heartbreaking to watch. That is a real feat, and Alan Trong, Trong, pulls it off incredibly well. I mean, I watched about the first 5 minutes and I was like, yeah, I'm really in here, and it's one of those movies, a bit like Dead Man's Shoes. It's not necessarily a movie to be enjoyed. When it finishes, you're kind of like, okay, right. I'm gonna get up and go about my day. I think I might cheer myself up by watching a war film. It does require a certain amount of fortitude from the viewer to really to hang in there. It's a tough watch, but like I said, I couldn't say that I enjoyed it, and it's not for everybody. It really isn't for everybody. In fact, you've probably already made your mind up whether you'd want to see it or not. So it's pretty much irrelevant what I say from here on out. But let me know if you do watch it. I'd love to know. I'd love to know what other people make of that movie. So now it's on to TV series. And here we go. The TV series are... first up, I watched season 3 of You, Y-O-U, You. That's on Netflix. I've been in since season 1, from the very first episode, and every time a new season lands, I always watch it. It just took me a little bit of time to get around to season 3, and these are 3 absolute rock solid seasons. If you are looking for a season for something to watch where there's a good chunk of episodes, you want to dig into like 30 episodes and really immerse yourself in something to binge, then I definitely think is worth a go. It really is. Each season has, first season you find out who he is and what the fuck's going on. Second season it changes tack. Third season changes tack again. But it's so well written, it's so well acted, and also there's an inner monologue. There is a voiceover of the main character that goes on, and at times it is just hilarious in a sort of Dexter kind of way, and that's the only thing I can sort of compare it to. But really enjoying it, and by the way, really enjoying the reboot. I hadn't planned on doing this, but really enjoying the reboot of Dexter as well. 3 episodes in, really enjoying it. And I'll throw this out there as well. If you haven't seen any of Succession on Sky, that's another cracker. Brian Cox is fucking brilliant in it. In fact, everybody is brilliant in it. At times, it is just hilarious. And it's not meant to be. It's not a comedy, but it is just absolutely brilliant. Next up, a mini-series on the BBC called Show Trial. And I've really fallen out of love with the BBC recently. I'm all for inclusivity, but in every scene, It just sometimes it just draws me out of the drama, and it just smacks me out of what I'm watching to go, hang on, what the fuck's going on here? Do you know what? Show trial, really enjoyed it. And huge props to Celine Buckens, who plays the lead character, Cleo Roberts, I believe, and she is really unlikable, yet likable, and that is so hard to do, so hard to get right. Again, funnily enough, like I was saying about mental illness being something that's so hard to get right. I really enjoyed it. There's some twists and turns along the way, but the entire time you're watching it, I found it quite captivating. Brilliantly acted, really well written, and did she do it? We'll have to find out, won't you? And funnily enough, along those lines, I watched the first season of Clickbait on Netflix. I'd seen it there, and I was like, can I be bothered? Yeah, right. 8 episodes. Now, I watched the first episode, which was, I think, about 44 minutes long, and it got to a point where I was like, so much has happened already in this episode. Surely, hang on, this can't be one episode. It must have just run over into like episode 2. So I paused it. No, it was on 35 minutes. It's like, fucking hell, this is insane. So right out the gate from episode 1, I was like, okay, I'm in. Now, at times there's some slightly ropey acting. At times there's there's little bits in here and there, a bit clunky or whatever. But you know what? It's one of those where you get to the end of the episode and you look at your watch and think, fuck it, I'll watch another one. So if you're up for that, and if that's the kind of thing that you want to watch, something that's just going to, really draw you in all the way through, and I'll guarantee you won't guess who did it, but maybe you will. So yeah, actually, I need to give you the premise there. Basically, there is a father of a family, 2 kids, wife, and he goes off to work, and then they report him missing, and all of a sudden he turns up on a video website. They can't call it YouTube, but let's call it YouTube. He turns up on YouTube with a sign around his neck saying, like, I abuse women. If this gets to 5 million likes, I die. So right out the gate, it's like, fuck. So his family are immediately, obviously, trying to track him down, going to the police, showing him the video, and the police are like, well, it might be a hoax. And they're like, for fuck's sake. And of course, every time they show the video to somebody, or every time someone looks at the video, it's another fucking view, getting it closer to 5 million. It's just, that was a really, really clever device that I haven't seen used before. And that's hence you get drawn in. At least I did anyway. And something else that I've been drawn into, I love Narcos on Netflix. I love Narcos Mexico on Netflix. And there has been season 3 of Narcos Mexico on Netflix. And guess what? Yeah, really enjoyed it. Absolutely great. Just, come on, Narcos. If you don't know about it now, then whatevs. And then finally, a documentary series I've never had any interest whatsoever in watching. And then I heard a podcast, and it's called Drive to Survive. It's the behind the scenes F1 documentary on Netflix. It's up to 3 seasons. Never had any interest in it. And then I was listening to Christian Horner of the Red Bull team, who's the director of the Red Bull team, being interviewed. And I thought, you know what? I might give this a go. Now, the first season is Red Bull and all the smaller teams. And then, because, all the bigger teams are like, oh, no, you're all right, thanks. No, off you go. Away with you. And then, of course, they saw how popular season 1 was. And all of a sudden, season 2 starts with, technical director of Ferrari being interviewed. It's like, oh, right. Oh, come to the party, have we? And that doesn't mean that season 1 that it isn't worth watching. All 3 seasons, I've just found it so engrossing. I mean, if there's one thing I love, it is behind the scenes, fly on the wall sports documentaries. Argue amongst yourselves as whether you think F1 is sport or just glorified traffic. But I'm just constantly next episode. I watched all 3 seasons in 3 or 4 days. Seriously. But I mean, I've had the time on my hands, guys. I've had a lot of time on my hands. Well, on one hand, my other hand is in a cast. Long story. So, I just really enjoyed it. Really, if you're into your sports docs, watch it. You do not have to be into F1. You do not have to be into F1. It is about the stories behind the scenes, okay, and how some of that bleeds over into the racing as well. But it really, really is worth a watch. And if you are a fan of F1, you're probably already watching this. But if you are a fan of F1 and you're not watching it, for fuck's sake, seriously, whatever reason that made you decide to not watch, then you need to watch. I've always had a kind of a passing interest in F1, and who can't, with Lewis Hamilton being, one of the greatest racing drivers who've ever lived. Wow. Really, really, really surprised by it. So, there you go. Wow, that is all the reviews done. I've got through everything, and coming up for 50 minutes. So look, there you go. That is the latest viewer's guide. I will be back in the new year with more guests. So from all of us here at Movie Bollocks, that's just me. From all of us here at Movie Bollocks, may the end of your year be fantastic, and may 2022 be even more wonderful, because that is the next time I'll be speaking to you when it comes to Movie Bollocks. But obviously all of the other bollocks, those talking bollocks and that their old bollocks, will continue to be coming your way. Speak to you soon.